If you're involved with ordering goods and or services, you'll be pleased to know that with Visage, that can be as simple as a button click on your favourites menu. If you're a casual user or simply want to know where you'd find that normally in the menu structure, navigationally, we'd start at purchase orders, go into the transactions menu, specifically choose the orders menu, and from there we'd select the order transaction entry. On entry into the process, the system will ask us for an order number. So if we wanted to call up an existing order, we could key that in. You may recall my parameters were set up so that the system automatically allocates order numbers for me. So if I was creating a new order, I'd simply leave this field blank. And indeed, because I'm set up for automatic allocation, if I put a non-existent order number in, the system will give me a little bit of a nag saying that's not a valid order number, and also because my system is set up to automatically generate these numbers, I should leave the order number field blank. So it's telling me what I should already know. So the first major field that we get asked, or information that we need to put in of significance, is actually the supplier code. Now I'll just draw your attention to a couple of areas on the screen. First, in our navigation area at the moment, we're fairly light on. We have this details screen that we're on, and a note log screen, and the note log screen we can't even get to that. And I'd also draw your attention to this delivery box down the bottom. And the reason I'm drawing your attention to both of those is if I put a supplier code in, and remember in terms of any field anywhere in the system, I can call up a search screen for this, which I can do by using my my toolbar item. I can use my right click context menu and select search from there, or alternatively I can simply use my keyboard action as well to call up that search screen. And in terms of searching, I can put in part of a supplier's code, their category, select people that are particular terms. By default, the system won't include inactive suppliers, but I could include them if I wanted to. I could get suppliers that related to or were associated with a particular entity, or, as would most often be the case, I would simply put in one or more words from the supplier's name and find the person I'm after from there. And the other possibility and likely event is that I'd actually know these codes. Now you'll notice once the code is put in, a couple of things have happened. You might have noticed some extra screens pop up here that are going to allow us to enter in details of products or services. There's also an invoices screen. This could sound interesting. And there's a new standard screen as well. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll also see that that's been populated with delivery information. It's telling me that my normal delivery for this supplier is via email. This is the email address it would go to. Don't normally want to read receipt, but I could request one this time. And that's assuming I send it via email, because I also have a fax number here and also the normal person I'm speaking to. So just for reference or memory as much as anything, over on the supplier, this was set up on the order delivery tab for our supplier here, and that's where the information has come through. So a lot of stuff has come through. You may have also noticed that the order date has always been sitting there as today. It's assuming that today is the day that I want to advertise as my order date. It could be that I'm actually going to hang on to this for a while, and I know it's going to take me about a week to finalise this order, because it could be an open order that I'm going to build up over a week or so, or maybe 3 or 4 days, whatever suits, before I go and send out to the supplier. It obviously depends on what the situation is. You'll also notice that as I changed that order date, the delivery date changed as well. Assuming that you want the thing as soon as you deliver it. Of course, it could be that what you really want is you're not going to want or expect that stuff until the 27th of the 3rd. Bear in mind you can raise an order now and ask for delivery in 2 or 3 months' time as well. So having orders with an expected delivery date forward dated isn't a problem. nor is the fact that I've entered my date up in an extremely strange way there, 23,3, but the system still will understand what that is. But remember, on our parameters we said that we had a no delivery window the last week of the month. Don't allow any deliveries after the 24th. So because of that, the system has adjusted my delivery date to be the first of the following month. And it's no April Fool's Day joke, because remember, setting that up means that you don't get deliveries at the end of the month if you don't really need them. They're going to be pushed forward to the next month, and that can help you with your cash flow situation. But of course, if I bring that delivery date back to, say, the 23rd or even the 24th of the 3rd, the system will quite happily accept that. Two fields that I've skipped over are the authorised by and ordered by. Now these can be, and often are, two different people. It could also be that it's exactly the same person. And in this case, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be me. Because I set myself up with a password, I have to enter the password in to be able to use my code. If I don't get my password right, I don't get to enter the code in. However, if I do get my password correct, it will quite happily accept that from me as well. And you'll notice that because I hadn't asked for emailed copies of important changes to this order, that isn't ticked. Had I wanted to do that, I could come back here and flag myself for deliveries. Actually, I might just remove my password as well to make life easy. Oh look, my password was a secret after all. So that now, if you don't have those passwords and so forth in place, if I use the same thing here on ordered by, you'll see that that's come up. It's ticked the box, hasn't bothered to ask me for a password at all. That's got rid of all of the red stuff on this front screen except the order number, and we know that we can leave that blank from what we said. You do have the option at this stage of putting in this thing called an order requisition number. It's really just an internal reference. If you're raising this on the basis of a piece of paper that someone has given you, may relate to a person's name or a particular back order or whatever the scenario, you can enter details up here, which are really just private information. It can be public, obviously any information can be included on the purchase order if that's what you want, but typically that would just come through. I also note that my supplier obviously hasn't been set up properly because he doesn't have a delivery code associated with him, but that's okay because I can manually enter the code up, or of course I've got my search facilities to go and select a mechanism from there as well. If we just move on to the product screen at this stage, I should point out, if you're using the job costing system, you could also nominate a default job to be associated with this particular purchase order that will then be used on subsequent screens. And of course, if you don't have job costing, that question won't get asked. If we come across to the product screen, the first thing that we get asked is the supplier's product code. This is working on the assumption that you may have a supplier's catalogue book in front of you, you've looked something up, you've found what it is you're after, so you would put in the supplier's product code, and if this is something that we've purchased from the supplier in the past, the system will find our corresponding number, and in this case they're one and the same. And once more have been taken to the job number field. Just be aware also that in terms of the product description, although this is the product description that has come from the master file for any of these products, you always have the opportunity of going into the field and adding some more information. So for example, you might say something like, please make it a pink one, or something similar, just for additional information if you need to with the supplier. Normally, hopefully, your product descriptions are going to be more than sufficient for the task. The system assumes that you're ordering the stock for the entity you're in at the moment, but of course that's a drop down, so you can go and select somewhere else, but I would think that's normally going to be the case. And also that the delivery date corresponds to the delivery date we had on the first screen. But it is possible to have a staggered delivery in terms of this one purchase order, so you could enter in multiple delivery dates and have different delivery dates for different products, or even the same product with a number of different delivery dates. You could enter a job number, as I said, if you're using job costing. I'm not going to worry about it at the moment. I'll just use my enter or tab key to move to the next field, because generally what would have happened is I'd be at this supply product code field, I'd put that in, go to our product, I'd accept that, go to the job on the basis that everything else is a default. I'll hit my enter or tab key here to go to the order quantity. I might want a dozen of these, hit my enter key or tab key. System will go out, look at our standard pricing for this particular item. If there are any specials in place for the supplier that are valid now, I'll bring those special prices and so forth in. So, vast majority of time, hopefully this pricing is correct. However, it could be that I've been on the phone to this guy and I've negotiated a special deal. Today only, if I order 12 of these, he'll actually let me have 12 for $400. So there's a slight saving there. So I have the option at this stage of overriding that price if I want to. Now I could go and give myself 10% discount if I wanted to. The price will adjust accordingly. Or I can also say that the price per, although it's normally price per one or per unit, I've negotiated a deal that said it's actually per 12. It's $400 per 12, and I would have left that discount to be blank, and it's done all the calculations and so forth for you. Now you'll notice I've moved on to the next row field. I did that because if I had come down to the cost field and hit enter through tab, or hit the tab button to move to discount, if I use the tab or enter button, I'll go to this next row field. And whilst we say normally that you can use the tab or enter button interchangeably, it's not the case here. Where you see a highlight around a button on the screen, the tab and enter buttons behave quite differently. If I was to use the enter button, the system will actually take me to the next field, and you'll see there's a highlight around the services area now, and if I hit the tab again, I'll just move down through those additional pages. Whereas if I am on that next row button and if I use my enter key, it's exactly the same as if I'd actually used my mouse key and clicked on the button. So bottom line for you, I suppose, means that in terms of entering this information up, you can just use the enter key and the system will automatically move on to the next line, onto the next line, onto the next line. We're back to the our product code field here. If you didn't know the supplier's product code, and more often than not you may not, you can just enter up your own internal product number for the thing, and if it's something that we've purchased from the supplier in the past, the system will go and fill in our part number. Now you might notice that although both of these products are our product code is exactly the same, here where I've had the system go and get me the supplier's part number automatically, it's come up with a different part number. And you may do a Professor Julius Sumner Miller there and say, why is it so? Let's go and have a look. If we have a look at comparative prices for the product in question, you'll notice here that we have a table of who our suppliers are and what the product numbers are that we've used when we've purchased it. And the very first one in the table here for my RF supplier, that's the part number. And when the system goes and does an automatic lookup for me, it will go and retrieve the first part number it finds from this supplier. Because remember, it's possible that in your system you might have a widget and you have one code for the widget. The widget comes in black, green, blue and yellow, but you treat them all as a single product code. However, your supplier may track them individually, and he may track red widgets as distinct from blue as opposed to yellow, as opposed to pink and any other color. So it's possible that you may have multiple part numbers from your supplier that relate to a single part number in your system. The other likely event is as well that when entering in supplier part numbers, someone has stuffed it up, figuratively speaking, and we have an incorrect linkage on there. But the system will always use the first linkage that we find for the product in question. And here, if we just used our normal price, we might be getting another 12 of those just at normal price. And I can just bypass all this if I don't want to go through it and hit my next row button. The other scenario I have is if I have a supplier's part number that I looked up in the catalogue, and it's something that the system has not seen us purchase or receive from the supplier in the past. So the system has gone out, looked to see if it could find a reference. I might make that a different number that's easier for me to remember. 12321. It's gone out, seen if we've got a reference for a 12321 from this supplier. It hasn't, so it's asking us to nominate what our internal part number is. And simply by doing that at the stage of raising the purchase order, or alternatively, at the stage of doing a receipt if there was no purchase order, but that is the process that goes and creates entries on that comparative price table we just had a look at. Here, of course, if we just use enter, come down, we might be ordering 2 of these, and here the pricing that is going to be used is, because obviously we didn't have any pricing information from this supplier, the pricing is going to default to the standard price associated, or standard purchase price at least, associated with this product from the master file. If that price is incorrect, you could obviously change it if you needed to. The other thing I'll just make you aware of, for a number of people, we've had special code in place for their print routines when they go and print purchase orders and so forth out, so that if any item has a zero cost associated with it, it doesn't actually produce a thing called a purchase order. It produces a thing called a request for quotation. That's what it actually says on the top of the document, and the idea is you send that out to the supplier. Rather than having a unit cost of 0 there, the request for quotation would say advise. The theory is the supplier will ring you up, you will then come back and put in your buy price that he's quoted you for that particular item, and all's well with the world. So continue on here, entering as many products as you like. Likewise, if you're ordering services, remembering that the service codes are things that you've set up previously, and you can have gazillions of these. Services can be things that you buy and get done, like it might be sandblasting if you're involved with a jobbing type environment, or painting or something that someone external does, but it can also be stuff like carpet cleaners and so forth. It depends here on what your rules are. Like, do you need a purchase order for absolutely everything, just in terms of the tracking and traceability and so forth. So in this case, it's unlikely that we would do that, so I won't even bother entering anything up there. We'll just get rid of that line, and we'll have a look at purchase orders for services as a totally separate exercise, I think. And invoices screen has no use to us at the moment, but as we'll see later on, as we get physical receipts from suppliers, this will be populated with details of those invoices, and if need be, we can go and zoom out, see the details of the invoices, get details up on screen and so forth. But if that's our purchase order, we've raised a purchase order for the princely sum of $32,349.50. At this stage, all we need to do is hit the save button, and the system will allocate a purchase order number for us. And from here, if we wanted to, we could then also go out and send the purchase order off to the supplier by hitting the email button. So it tells us whereabouts it's been sent to. Strangely enough, this one is likely to appear on my desktop. If I had Outlook open, which I will go and do, and we hopefully will get an order coming up here. So there's our purchase order that's been attached, gone out to our supplier. That's it. purchase orders in the system. It's ready to track. It's ready to rock and roll. Now, there's a whole lot more stuff to do with purchase orders. Um, have a look at the next video. It's going to be of interest to you if you want to do things like, oh, I don't know, let's say update this status on the purchase order, or maybe go through the authorization cycle. So I hope to catch you in the second video. Cheers.